I want to kill the child in my belly with my own hands, just because my mother-in-law told me that my husband cheated. At this time I was lying on the operating table, quietly waiting for the operation, but the doctor came over to me and asked, "Why are you aborting the child?" I gritted my teeth and said, "My husband cheated. I don't want to have a child for this heartless man." Unexpectedly, the doctor was stunned on the spot after hearing this. He tore off his mask, and it was actually my husband. The tight string in my head broke all of a sudden. Meng Yao, he called my name, and his voice was shaking. "I'm on a business trip for 10 days. Who told you I cheated?" His questioning was like a hammer hitting my heart, and I looked at him blankly, my lips trembling, and I couldn't say a word. How could it be him? Shouldn't he have a meeting in a city thousands of miles away? "You, how are you here?" My voice was broken. Gu Cheng's eyes were bloodshot, and he threw away the equipment in his hand, and the thing smashed into the tray with a screeching sound. He bent down, but his movements were very gentle to help me up. His voice was very low, and he trembled with fear. The original doctor, Lee, had sudden acute appendicitis and was sent to the hospital for emergency treatment. And the director called me out of the bed on compensatory leave and asked me to take this urgent operation. It was too rushed. I only swept the word Meng Yao on the surgical consent form, and thought it was a person with the same name and surname. Damn it, I really didn't expect it to be you. The huge sense of absurdity and fear of pouring it on my head like ice water. I almost died at the hands of my husband. "Speak." He was a little out of control and asked again, "Who told you that I cheated?" Mother-in-law Zhang Lan's grieving face suddenly appeared in front of my eyes, when she grabbed my hand and cried so much that she burst into tears and snot. "Yao Yao, Mom is sorry for you. It's Gu Cheng. That kid has no conscience. He has someone outside. Mom has seen the photos. It's true. That woman lives next door to his hotel. And the two are intimate. You are still young. You can't be dragged down by this beast for the rest of your life. We can't have this child." She also stuffed me with a photo, in which Gu Cheng and a young girl were standing at the door of the hotel. The girl was smiling very brightly. Her head was leaning intimately on his shoulder, and the hotel in the background was indeed the one he stayed at on this business trip. She showed me a few more screenshots of forged chat records. Those unsightly ambiguous words. Every word was like a knife, making my heart unbearable. My last reason was all ruined by these evidences. My heart was broken and I couldn't put it together, and my only thought was to destroy it all, to destroy the product of this betrayal. But now, Gu Cheng is standing in front of me. There is no guilt in his eyes, only the anger of being wronged, and the distress that cannot be hidden from me. "Yes, it's Mom." I finally found my voice, as weak as a thin thread. "Zhang Lan." The murderous aura in Gu Cheng's eyes was almost condensed. He gently but firmly helped me up from the cold operating table, wrapped my trembling body with his coat, and wrapped me in a warm, reassuring breath. I was like a soulless puppet, letting him pull me and staggering out of this operating room that almost became my grave. My mind was blank. Only my mother-in-law's face was for my good, and Gu Cheng's fiery eyes swayed back and forth in front of my eyes. A big and ridiculous scam slowly opened the curtain in front of me, and I, the stupidest person, handed over the butcher's knife with my own hands and became my own victim. The shocked discussions of the nurses behind me were locked behind the door. The lights in the corridor were very bright, shining on me a little. I looked down at my slightly bulging abdomen, and the fear overwhelmed me like a tsunami, and I almost killed my child with my own hands. Back in the place called home, it feels like a century later, and the sound of keys turning in the keyhole is particularly harsh at this time. Gu Cheng pushed open the door, and the laughter in the living room stopped all of a sudden. Mother-in-law Zhang Lan and her niece, that is, my cousin Wang Qian, were sitting on the sofa eating melon seeds and watching TV, and the coffee table was full of snacks and fruits. Seeing me and Gu Cheng coming back together, the smiles on their faces instantly froze, especially Zhang Lan. A trace of panic flashed in her eyes, and then she pretended to be particularly stunned, stood up and raised her voice and said, "Gu Cheng, why are you back?" Wang Qian also stood up and hid behind Zhang Lan timidly, but her eyes swept back and forth on us like radar. Gu Cheng ignored her, and looked at Zhang Lan with a cold and piercing look that I had never seen before. He pulled me and walked straight to the sofa. My legs were still weak, almost dragged by him. Zhang Lan's eyes fell on my intact belly, and her face turned pale with a brush. But in just a second, she adjusted her expression, slapped her thighs suddenly, like a lit firecracker, and exploded all at once. "Meng Yao, you cruel woman. How can you do this to our family? That's the flesh and blood of the Gu family. How can you do it?" She pounded her chest and stomped her feet. Tears flowed as soon as she said it, as if she had unscrewed the faucet. "I kindly persuade you to analyze the pros and cons for you. You are good. You are going to do this kind of harmful thing behind my back. Are you worthy of my son? Are you worthy of our ancestors and ancestors?" She cried as if I was the heinous sinner, and she was an innocent victim of being let down. Wang Qian immediately stepped forward to support the shaky Zhang Lan, and persuaded softly, "Auntie, don't get excited. Be careful." He turned his head to look at me again, and his big watery eyes were full of worry. "Cousin, do you have any misunderstanding? Brother Gu Cheng is not that kind of person. Don't think about it. Let's say something. Well, you are too mentally unstable. What if you do something impulsive? Her words sounded like persuasion, but in fact, every sentence added fuel to the fire, implying that I was cruel and mentally problematic, and put all the responsibility on me. Which was really a good double read of deep love between aunt and nephew. If I hadn't just walked away from the gate of hell, maybe I would really applaud their acting skills. I looked at them. My whole body was chilled, angry, afraid, nauseous. All kinds of emotions were mixed together. And I almost vomited. Enough. Gu Qing finally spoke. His voice was not loud, but with a majesty that could not be refused. The living room suddenly became quiet. Zhang Lan's cry was stuck in her throat, and Wang Qian also shrank her neck. Meng Yao. You go back to your room to rest. Gu Qing turned his head to look at me. The coldness in his eyes melted instantly. Only distress remained. I nodded and turned obediently. I needed a space to let my chaotic mind turn again. A second before I closed the bedroom door, I heard Gu Cheng's voice, which was a cold that I had never heard before, suppressing the anger of a volcanic eruption. Mom, where did the photo come from? I stuck behind the door, and the blood all over my body rushed to my ears, and I heard Zhang Lan say with a lack of confidence, what photo? I don't know what you're talking about. Let me say it again. Where did you get that photo of me with a girl? Gu Cheng's tone was devoid of the half-respect of the past, and it was all cold and hard questioning. I was also sent to me by someone else. I'm an old woman. How could I get these things? Zhang Lan began to quibble. I'm also afraid that your daughter-in-law will suffer, and I'm afraid that you will be deceived by the vixen outside. Others. Which one else? Gu Qing pressed step by step. I forgot. Gu Qing sneered. That photo. The traces of the picture are so obvious. Can't you see it? The light source in the hotel corridor is on the left, but the light source of the face in the photo is on the right. Even an amateur retoucher will not make such a low-level mistake. You can trick my wife to the hospital with a fake photo full of loopholes. Zhang Lan, what do you want to do? Outside the door, Zhang Lan's breathing became thick and rapid. She probably didn't expect that her son, who had always been filial, would expose her so mercilessly. My hands covered my mouth tightly, not allowing myself to make a sound. From despair to shock, to the flame of revenge ignited at this moment, my world, in just 1 hour, was completely subverted, and this war had just begun. The bedroom door was gently pushed open, and Gu Qing walked in, holding a glass of warm water in his hand. Drink some water. Be shocked. His voice was very soft, and a little imperceptible hoarseness. I took the water glass. My fingertips touched the temperature of the cup wall, and the warmth flowed down my fingertips to my heart, only to find that my body was still shaking uncontrollably. She's still hard-mouthed. Gu Qing sat next to me, her tone full of exhaustion and disappointment. She said that she was also deceived and refused to say the source of the photo. I took a sip of warm water. The warm liquid slid down my throat, slightly soothing the turbulent waves in my heart. I raised my head to look at Gu Qing. His face was full of worry, but his eyes were particularly firm. I'm fine, I said. My voice was much more stable than just now. I put down my water glass and picked up my mobile phone from the bedside table. My tears were gone, and from now on, I won't shed another tear. I found the call recording I had just saved, pressed the play button, and my own voice immediately came out of the phone, which was a hysterical, collapsing voice that I had never heard before. Mom, you tell me, where did you see it? You have to be honest with me. Who is that woman? Where have they progressed? How can he do this to me? I am pregnant with his child. This is a call to my mother-in-law on the way to the hospital. At that time I was already carried away by anger and despair, questioning everything like a madman. I used the most typical crazy literature. There is no logic. It is all emotional catharsis. And this way is precisely the best way to induce the other party to tell the truth. In the recording, Zhang Lan's voice sounded immediately afterwards, with a kind of successful and fake comfort. Yao Yao, calm down. Listen to me. I saw it with my own eyes. Can there be a fake? It's in the hotel where he stayed. I asked someone to see it. Can I still lie to you? The woman lived in the room next to him, and the two of them looked affectionate. He said he was going to a meeting. Who knows if he fooled around with that vixen? Yao Yao, this kind of man can't be wanted. Listen to your mother. Beat the child, and mom will find you a better one. Every sentence is like a chisel, carving holes in her lies that cannot be defended. I turned off the recording, raised my eyes, and looked at Gu Qing quietly. His face had changed from tired to iron. He didn't say a word, took out his mobile phone, dialed a phone directly, and pressed hands-free. The phone rang a few times, and a hearty male voice came. Hey, Doctor Gu, why did you miss me just after we separated? It's Gu Cheng's colleague Dr. Li. Lao Li. Let me ask you, have I been living in a standard room with you for the whole 10 days of my business trip? Gu Cheng's voice was terribly calm. The other end of the phone was stunned for a moment, and then smiled. Nonsense. We sleep in the same bed every day, and I even know that you scolded the director in your sleep at night. What's wrong? Who lives next door to my room? Gu Qing continued to ask. Next door. There are 2 big men who live next door, and they are also here for a meeting, and I have smoked with them. Why are you asking this? What happened? It's okay. Gu Qing spat out 3 words and hung up the phone directly. The perfect chain of evidence is completely closed. A witness who personally admitted to seeing it with his own eyes. An ironclad evidence that confirmed that he lived with a male colleague the whole time. and Zhang Lan's lies were exposed to the decent skin. I stood up and opened the bedroom door. Zhang Lan and Wang Qian were still standing in the living room, their expressions like solidified oil paint, embarrassing and ugly. Seeing me coming out, Zhang Lan immediately wanted to put on the shelf of an elder again. I didn't give her a chance to speak, so I walked straight to her and played the recording on her mobile phone again. And the conversation she swore and lied clearly echoed in every corner of the living room. Zhang Lan's face turned from white to red visibly, then from red to blue, and finally became ashen, and her body shook, as if the bones of her whole body had been sucked away. Auntie, what's going on? Wang Qian stammered on the side, trying to round things up. Is there any misunderstanding? Cousin, don't be angry with your aunt. Shut up. Gu Qing turned around suddenly, and a shout of anger frightened Wang Qian. This was the first time since I met Gu Qing that I had seen him speak to Wang Qian in such a stern tone. Wang Qian's face instantly turned pig liver color. Tears rolled in her eyes, looking like she had been wronged. But unfortunately, no one was in the mood to see her pretend to be pitiful now, and all eyes were on Zhang Lan. She opened her mouth, and a ho-ho sound came out of her throat, unable to say a word, completely intelligible. Gu Qing walked up to her, and the tall figure cast a shadow and completely covered her. Mom, he spoke, his voice full of indescribable disappointment. I'm really disappointed. These 5 words were heavier than any accusation, like a hammer, completely smashing the last disguise on Zhang Lan's face. She slumped on the sofa, her eyes scattered. It turned out that I tore those hypocritical masks with my own hands. So cool. The air in the living room froze, and only Zhang Lan's heavy gasping sound remained. Seeing that all the quibbles were useless, she finally tore off the warm disguise, revealed the most hideous and ugly face, and suddenly bounced off the sofa, like a beast that was cornered, and began to roll. Yes, I did it. So what? She pointed at my nose and screamed, spitting stars flying. Who am I doing this for? Not for you yet. For our family. She turned to Gu Qing and complained in tears. Look at her. Look at what she is from. The daughter of an ordinary working family. What do you want? Why should she marry you? Why should you be the daughter-in-law of our Gu family? I have worked hard to cultivate you into a talent. You are the chief surgeon of a tertiary hospital, and you have a bright future. What can she help you with? She will only drag you down. These bitter words, like poisonous knives, pierced into my heart. After 3 years of marriage, she has never shown the slightest thought of this in front of me, and she has always looked loving and kind. And it turns out that under that smiling face, there is such a deep contempt and calculation. Enough. Gu Cheng's forehead was bruised, and he took a step forward and protected me behind him. Meng Yao is my wife. I chose her. I love her. That's enough. Love. Can love be eaten as food? Zhang Lan laughed wildly. Her laughter was sad and harsh. Gu Qing, you are too naive. Marriage is a partnership to live, a strong union. It's not poverty alleviation. Her words became more and more vicious, and she turned over the old accounts. Her eyes fell on my flat abdomen like a poisonous snake, and a cruel smile curled up on the corner of her mouth. With her body bones, can she give birth to a grandson for our Gu family? Don't forget how she aborted that child a year ago. I think she is a person who can't give birth to a son. Even if you are born, you are a loser. With a bang, my mind went blank. The unexpected miscarriage a year ago was the deepest scar in my heart. During that time, my whole body was trapped in depression. It was Gu Cheng who accompanied me, and came out little by little. This matter was a pain that both of us were careful not to touch. But now, Zhang Lan used the most vicious words to tear the bloody wound open again and sprinkle salt on it. My body started to get chills, from my fingertips all the way to my heart. Shut up for me. Gu Cheng was completely furious. His eyes were red, like an enraged lion. His muscles were tense, as if he was about to rush up in the next second. This was the first time I had seen him so out of control. Let's move out. He grabbed my hand, his voice trembling with extreme anger. This home. We won't stay any longer. His palms were hot, and there was a constant stream of strength, and I could feel his anger, his distress, and his determination to protect me. Escape is the most direct and easiest option at the moment. But I don't want to. I raised my head and met Zhang Lan's face distorted by anger and pride. Why did I want to leave? This home was bought by me and Gu Cheng with a loan, and the real estate certificate had the names of the two of us written on it. And the person who should get out was her. I pulled Gu Cheng with my backhand. He looked back at me in astonishment. There were no tears on my face, no anger, only a cold calm. Husband. I looked into his eyes. My voice was very low, but very clear. Move away. It's too cheap for her. This home. I want to clean it with my own hands. My voice was not loud, but it was like a stone thrown into a dead pond, causing ripples. A hint of surprise flashed in Gu Cheng's eyes, and then it turned into complete understanding and support. He held my hand back tightly and nodded vigorously. Zhang Lan and Wang Qian originally thought that we would be scared away, and they both had smug smiles on their faces. But when they heard my words and saw my eyes, the smiles suddenly froze, and my eyes must have made them shudder. because there was no longer the meekness and tolerance of the past, only endless ice and fire edge. The prelude to revenge, at this moment, was pulled open by my own hands. I am no longer a passive beaten lamb. From now on, I am a hunter with a butcher's knife in my hand. My first target is Wang Qian. This carefully camouflaged White Lotus is Zhang Lan's most powerful accomplice and the direct beneficiary of this conspiracy. If I don't uproot her, it will be difficult to get rid of the hatred in my heart. In the evening, Gu Qing was dealing with the hospital's urgent matters in the study, and I sat next to him, calmly analyzing the current situation. Wang Qian works as an administrator in a private company, and her salary is not high, but what she usually wears is all famous brands. I said, quickly sorting out all the information about Wang Qian in my mind. She is very vain, and she wants to marry a rich person and achieve a class leap. You are the best springboard in her eyes. Gu Qing stopped typing on the keyboard, turned his head to look at me, and his eyes were full of apology. I'm sorry, Yao Yao. It was I who didn't handle the distance from her that gave her a chance. Wang Qian has liked to stick to Gu Qing since she was a child. Gu Qing has always regarded her as an ignorant sister, and he has a lot of connivance with her. Who would have thought that this connivance would raise a poisonous snake waiting for an opportunity? It's useless to say that now. I interrupted his self-blame. I need you to do me a favor. You say, no matter what it is, I will help you. Gu Cheng's tone was decisive. Without a trace of hesitation, help me find out if Wang Qian has any financial problems recently. A young girl who is vain and does not earn much is most likely to make mistakes in money, which must be her weakness. Gu Qing has a wide range of connections, especially in this city. No matter what, he can find out quickly. He only made 2 phone calls, and in less than half an hour, a detailed information was sent to his mailbox. My guess is not wrong. Wang Qian has arrears on several online lending platforms, and the total amount has exceeded 200,000 yuan, which is undoubtedly an astronomical amount for her low salary. Looking at the message in the email, a sneer appeared on the corner of my mouth. Bait. There is. Next, a professional angler is needed. I found my college classmate Zhou Qi, who didn't look for a job after graduation, started a business with her family, and is now the owner of a media company. As soon as I told Zhou Qi about my plan, she immediately got excited. No problem. Wrap it up on me. To deal with this green tea White Lotus, you have to use magic to defeat the magic. She then said seriously, but Yao Yao, are you sure you want to do this? Find someone to approach her to talk about it. Although it is not illegal, but in case she bites back, or leaves some kind of handle, it will not be good for you. I understood her concerns and quickly said, don't worry, Zhou Qi. Is this person reliable? Don't leave any tricks. We just talk nonsense. Don't involve money fraud. As long as we get the recording of her admitting to participating in the conspiracy, we will withdraw. Don't worry. Zhou Qi patted her chest and promised. Lin Hao is a newly signed artist of our company, with particularly strong professional ability and proportions, and he hates this kind of green tea with a knife in the back the most. The next day, a man named Lin Hao appeared downstairs in Wang Qian's company in a rented Porsche Cayenne. Zhou Qi insisted on using the best props to stabilize Wang Qian. Lin Hao is handsome, has a good temperament, and with the blessing of a famous brand and a luxury car, he looks like a rich second generation. He held a large bouquet of blue enchantresses and named them to give to Wang Qian, causing a sensation in the whole company. Wang Qian floated up to the Porsche in the envious and jealous eyes of her colleagues, and everything was just as I expected. Wang Qian, who admires vanity, has no resistance to this kind of domineering president who falls from the sky. In the next few days, Lin Hao launched a fierce pursuit of Wang Qian, sending a limited edition bag today, of course, a high-end imitation, and taking her to the most high-end restaurant tomorrow. Zhou Qi greeted the restaurant in advance, and the day after tomorrow inadvertently revealed that his family had several mansions in the city center. Wang Qian completely fell. She thought that she had really caught a golden turtle son-in-law, and the whole person exuded a light that was about to become a wealthy wife. And I, like a calm director, remotely commanded this good show through Zhou Qi. The time was almost up, and that night, Lin Hao invited Wang Qian to dinner at a high-end private club, and when the atmosphere was ambiguous, Lin Hao accidentally received a phone call. He said on the phone in a tone of extreme disgust, "What? Another one? Let me tell you, what I hate most is the kind of woman who destroys other people's families for money." After hanging up the phone, he said to Wang Qian with an apologetic face, "I'm sorry, Qian, a little trouble. I made you laugh." Wang Qian immediately asked with concern, "What's wrong? Are you in trouble?" Lin Hao sighed and began his carefully prepared performance. He said that he had a friend who was entangled by a green tea, and the woman obviously knew that his friend had a family, but she had to pounce on it, and finally caused his friend's wife to be separated and the family was ruined. "You say this kind of woman is particularly disgusting." Lin Hao looked into Wang Qian's eyes and asked with a righteous face. Wang Qian's heart chuckled, but her face immediately put on an expression of hatred. Yes, this kind of woman is the most shameless. It's simply social scum. It's disgusting," she echoed indignantly, for fear that Lin Hao would see her as that kind of woman. Qian, I know you are different from them." Lin Hao smiled with satisfaction, stretched out his hand to hold her hand, and said in a gentle tone, "You are so simple and kind. You will definitely not do the kind of thing that destroys other people's families. The foreshadowing is ready. It's time to take the bait. Lin Hao changed his mind and asked unintentionally. By the way, Qian, seeing that you usually spend a lot of money, are the conditions at home particularly good? Wang Qian's face froze slightly, and then she said vaguely, not yet. It's okay. Not particularly good. I think you seem to be watching some loan advertisements a few days ago. Lin Hao pretended to mention casually, his eyes full of concern. Have you encountered any difficulties? Tell me, how much money? It'll help you pay it back. Don't wrong yourself. This sentence, like a spell, instantly hit Wang Qian's weakness, and her eyes lit up all of a sudden. She looked at the perfect man in front of her, who was handsome, rich, gentle and considerate, and hated the mistress, and her inner defense began to collapse inch by inch. She felt that this was the best opportunity for her to confess everything, win sympathy, and solve all the arrears in one fell swoop. She began to cry with pear blossoms, saying that she was forced by her family, how snobbish her aunt Zhonglan was, and how domineering my cousin was and bullying her everywhere. She portrays herself as a poor little white flower who is bullied by her vicious cousin and used by her snobbish aunt. Lin Hao, let me tell you, my aunt's family looks down on me, especially my cousin Meng Yao. She is jealous of me being young and beautiful, afraid that I will rob her husband brother Gu Qing. In fact, brother Gu Qing doesn't like her at all. It's all her stalking, and she has to pester brother Gu Qing. This time I tricked my cousin into going to the hospital to beat the child. It was all planned by my aunt. I just couldn't bear to see her old man sad, so I reluctantly cooperated with her, and I didn't want to. The more she spoke, the more energetic she became, and the more she talked, the more engaged she became, and she didn't notice it at all. Lin Hao's mobile phone on the table was turning on the recording function, clearly recording every word she said. Fish. Successfully hooked. Zhang Lan's combat effectiveness was stronger than I expected, and after a few days of living at home, she began to act as a demon again. Under the banner of family and everything is prosperous, she held a party that was a family criticism meeting, saying what to resolve the conflict between me and Gu Qing and her, but in fact invited the 3 aunts and 6 mothers-in-law of the Gu family, and wanted to rely on these elders to collectively put pressure on me. She calculated that in front of so many elders, Gu Qing has always had a good face, and he definitely didn't dare not bow his head. And I, an outsider who married in, didn't dare to mess around. Zhang Lan personally called Gu Qing, and her tone returned to her previous loving appearance, as if what she had hysterically caused trouble with us a few days ago had never happened. She said on the phone, Gu Qing, let's go home for dinner on Saturday night. I called your 3rd uncle and 6th aunt and they all over. The family hasn't been together for a long time. If there is any misunderstanding, just talk about it in front of everyone. We are all a family. There is no overnight grudge. Gu Qing originally wanted to refuse, but I quietly shook my head next to him and said to him with my lips, go. We must go to this Hongmen banquet. Since she has set up the stage, how can I not fulfill her? On Saturday night, Gu Qing and I dressed up a little before going. I put on exquisite makeup and chose a well-tailored dress, which just set off my 4-month pregnant belly just right. Neither fat nor thin, very temperamental. Gu Qing wore a straight suit, with a tall posture and a very energetic look. As soon as the 2 of us pushed open the door of the old house, the originally noisy voice in the living room instantly became quiet, and everyone's eyes were like searchlights, hitting us in unison. Those 3 aunts and 6 women sat around the sofa, and all of them had the 4 big words Xingshi asking for forgiveness written on their faces, and they didn't feel good at first glance. Zhang Lan sat in the main seat in the middle. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she had just cried, pretending to be aggrieved. Wang Qian sat obediently next to her, bowing her head, looking like a little daughter-in-law who had been wronged, and she acted like that. At this time, an aunt who I can't remember what her name is, said in a strange way, yo, do you still know to come back? It's really promising. Even his own mother dares to be angry. Another aunt also followed suit. That's right, Gu Qing. We all grew up watching you. Why did you forget your mother after marrying a daughter-in-law? Another elder said to me, Xiao Meng. It's not me who said you. You have to know how to repay your kindness. Zhang Lan hurts you like a daughter. How can you turn the world upside down because of a little thing? And ask Gu Qing to move out. It's so ignorant. They put all the charges on my head, as if I were really some heinous bad person. Gu Cheng's face sank all of a sudden, and just as he was about to open his mouth to refute for me, I quietly pulled the corner of his clothes and motioned for him not to speak. With a smile on my face, I quietly listened to all of their accusations without saying a word. In their opinion, my silence is a loss of reason and a guilty conscience. And Zhang Lan couldn't help but show a little smug smile at the corner of her mouth, as if she felt that she had one. After a while, she pretended to come out to round things up. Okay, let's say a few words. Yao Yao is still pregnant with a child. Don't scare her. Then she looked at me and said in the tone of the elders teaching the younger generations, Yao Yao, I know you have grievances in your heart, but my mother is also for the good of this family. Today in front of all the elders, you apologize to your mother, and this matter will pass. Apologize. I laughed directly. I looked around the so-called relatives in the living room. Their faces were full of sanctimonious looks, and there were schadenfreude that couldn't be hidden. To put it bluntly, they were just to come to see the fun. I spoke slowly, not loud, but every word was clearly heard in everyone's ears. There is no need to apologize, but I did bring a little cheering show to everyone. As I said, I took out a small Bluetooth speaker from my bag and put it on the coffee table. When everyone looked puzzled, I pressed the play button on my phone. In the next second, Wang Qian's delicate and calculating voice resounded throughout the living room. Lin Hao, let me tell you. My aunt's family looks down on me, especially my cousin. She is jealous of me for being young and beautiful. This time, my aunt planned it all by herself, forging photos and making up chat records, with the purpose of driving my cousin away so that I could marry brother Gu Qing. Let me tell you, my relatives, all of them are fools. They believe whatever my aunt says, especially easy to fool. The recording continued to play, but the living room was so quiet that even a needle could be heard. Wang Qian's face instantly turned pale. There was no blood at all. She looked at me in horror, her lips trembling, as if she had seen a ghost. Zhang Lan was so angry that she trembled all over, pointed at me. You for a long time, and she couldn't say a word. Those 3 aunts and 6 mothers-in-law who had just accused me of righteous words were all stunned at the moment, and the expressions on their faces were varied, which was particularly wonderful, especially when they heard Wang Qian say that they were fools. Their faces were as black as the bottom of a pot. The situation was reversed all of a sudden. The 3rd aunt, who was the first to react, stood up suddenly, pointed at Wang Qian and scolded. Wang Qian, you little bitch. What did you just say? We treat you as our own niece, and you arrange us like this behind your back. Another elder also shouted to Zhang Lan. Zhang Lan, look at the good niece you taught. You have to give us a statement today. The scene instantly turned into a pot of porridge, and the voices of accusations and abuse came one after another. I looked at all this in front of me coldly, watching Zhang Lan and Wang Qian being besieged by the reinforcements they had invited themselves, and there was no wave in my heart. I walked to the center of the living room, turned off the speakers, and the noisy living room became quiet again. I looked at Zhang Lan and asked word by word, Mother-in-law, now, do you still think I need to apologize? Then I looked at those relatives again. Elders, you came today to say that you want to uphold justice, and now justice is here. Who is right and who is wrong? You can see for yourself. As for our family's affairs, I don't bother you. I didn't come to open a charity hole, and I didn't give anyone's face. They earned it themselves. After saying that, I stopped looking at any of them, took Gu Cheng's arm and said, Husband, let's go home. Gu Cheng looked at me deeply. His eyes were full of appreciation and pride. He nodded, hugged me tightly, and walked out of this disgusting place with his head held high in the complicated eyes of everyone. Behind him, Zhang Lan's angry screams and the quarrels of relatives were heard, and that sound, to me, was the most beautiful symphony. Wang Qian was surrounded by angry relatives and scolded, and finally dragged away by her parents, and when she heard that she was confined when she got home, she was not allowed to go out. After this toss, Zhang Lan was greatly injured, and she was silent behind closed doors in the old house, and she gave birth in peace for several days. I thought she would restrain herself for at least a while, but I still underestimated the viciousness and madness of a person. She didn't give up at all, but secretly held back her bad and made up a more vicious and inhuman lie. A week later, Gu Cheng's father, my father-in-law Gu Jiangwo, a man who has been doing business in other places all year round and rarely takes care of family affairs, suddenly returned. As soon as he arrived home, he called Gu Qing to the study, and the two talked for 2 hours in it. When Gu Qing came out of the study, his face was ugly and scary. He sat next to me, silent for a long time, and then said with difficulty, My dad, let me take you for a psychiatric evaluation. I was stunned all of a sudden. I couldn't believe my ears, and asked him, What? Gu Qing took a deep breath, with uncontrollable anger in his voice, and repeated to me, My mother told my dad that you have a history of genetic mental illness in your family, and that you want to abort the child this time, which is a precursor to a psychotic attack. She said that everything she did before, falsifying photos, and tricking you to go to the hospital, was all to stimulate you and make you get sick early, so that everyone could see your true face. She said that she was protecting the blood of our Gu family. I listened to what Gu Qing said, and I only felt a cold air rushing straight from the soles of my feet to the sky, and I couldn't help but laugh. This was not a happy laugh, but a sneer that trembled with this extreme absurdity and viciousness. Psychosis. Protect the bloodline. How twisted a person's heart must be to make up such a vicious lie, in order to kick me out of this house. She has reached the point of unscrupulousness, reversing black and white, and even trampling on human relationships. She is not acting. She is really crazy. Gu Qing looked at me, his voice full of powerlessness. My dad. I was a little convinced. My mother cried to death in front of him, and said that she had evidence that your mother had been hospitalized for mental problems back then. My mother did stay in the hospital, but that was after my father died in a car accident. She suffered from severe depression for a period of time because of excessive sadness, and later after treatment, she recovered a long time ago, no different from normal people. But this incident, when it came to Zhang Lan's mouth, became ironclad evidence that I had a history of genetic mental illness, and she actually used my mother's most painful experience as a weapon to attack me. which was really vicious. I looked at Gu Qing. My heart was as cold as being soaked in ice water, and asked him, "So, he asked you to take me to the appraisal?" I know Gu Jiangwo too well. He is an extremely strong and traditional person. What he values most is the purity of the family's face and blood. Zhang Lan's trick accurately hit the nail on the head. Gu Qing held my hand tightly, his eyes extremely firm. I refused. Yao Yao, I absolutely don't believe a word she said. My dad. I will deal with it. Looking at the trust in his eyes, my cold heart warmed up a little, but reason told me that things are not that simple. As long as Xianglan does not fall for a day, she is like a time bomb. I don't know when it will explode in a more vicious way. Evading and explaining, it can't solve the problem at all. And to deal with the madman, you have to use crazier means than her. I shook my head, and a strange smile appeared on my face. No, we don't have to deal with it. Gu Qing looked at me with a puzzled face, and I smiled and said, "Didn't she say that I was mentally ill? Didn't she want me to do an appraisal? Then let's follow her wishes." Gu Qing, this is not a crisis. This is an opportunity to uproot all her lies and make her never turn over. She wants to see me sick. Then I will go crazy to show her once. Gu Qing was completely enraged by his mother's bottomless madness, and he listened to my plan in silence, his eyes welling with terrifying anger. He stood up, paced back and forth in the living room, and finally stopped in front of me, his voice low and determined. "You're right, Yao Yao. It's too unfair to let you fight back alone. I'm also her son. She gave me life, but she has no right to ruin my life. This time, I also want to give her a big gift." In his eyes, there was a kind of fierceness that I had never seen before. That was the look of a complete rupture after being heartbroken by a loved one. The next day, Gu Qing went to work in the hospital as usual, but he did not go to the outpatient clinic, but went directly to the hospital's archives department. He is a senior chief surgeon in the hospital, and has also participated in the testing of the hospital's early electronic medical record system, and has a high data access authority. Zhang Lan has always been in good health, rarely sick. Even if there is a headache and brain fever, it is solved in the community hospital. But Gu Qing remembers that when he was very young, Zhang Lan once lived in their hospital for a period of time, when the family only said that he was not in good health and needed to recuperate. He didn't think much about it when he was young, but now that he looks back, this matter is strange everywhere. He sat in front of the computer, his fingertips quickly tapping on the keyboard, entering Zhang Lan's name and ID number, and an encrypted file popped up on the screen, showing a scanned copy of the old system more than 20 years ago. Gu Qing frowned, used his senior authority, and contacted a familiar archivist to apply to unlock the dusty electronic medical record on the grounds of tracing family medical history and assessing the health risks of future generations. When he saw the above diagnosis clearly, Gu Cheng's pupils contracted suddenly, and his breathing stopped for a moment. The medical record clearly states the patient Zhang Lan was admitted to the hospital due to suspected aplastic anemia, and was finally diagnosed as a carrier of Fanconi anemia after bone marrow aspiration and genetic testing. Fanconi is anemic. This is a rare autosomal recessive disease. The carrier usually has no symptoms, but their children have a 1/4 chance of getting the disease, and the sick children are usually accompanied by developmental malformations, progressive bone marrow failure, and are prone to malignant tumors, and the consequences are particularly serious. Gu Qing felt that his blood was about to solidify. He remembered that his cousin's child was born with congenital heart disease and developmental delay, and the family was in pain for this. It turned out that the root cause was here. Zhang Lan, his own mother, is the one who carries the gene for genetic diseases. She kept saying that she wanted to protect the pure blood of the Gu family, but she didn't mention a word about her family's genetic history, but instead poured the dirty water of mental illness on me, which is simply a great irony and hypocritical. Gu Cheng's anger almost burst through his chest. He forced himself to calm down, continued to look down. In the personal information column of the medical record, he found something that shocked him even more. The academic qualifications registered above were junior high school graduation, but Zhang Lan kept telling them that she graduated from high school and did not continue to go to college because of family difficulties. In the column of place of origin, it was written about a remote township he had never heard of, not the provincial capital. In her mouth, one lie after another, like peeling an onion, was uncovered layer by layer, revealing the long rotten core inside. Gu Qing felt that his life for the past 30 years had been built on a huge scam. He sat in a chair, did not move for a long time. The office was very quiet, and he could even hear the roar of his heart being hit by great disappointment and anger. He turned off the computer and printed out the medical record report, a few thin sheets of paper, but at the moment they weighed as much as 1,000 pounds. In the evening, he came home without saying a word, just put the report in front of me. I looked at the text on it, shocked to speechless. All the anger, all the grievances, at this moment, turned into the ultimate huge joke with black humor. What Zhang Lan tried so hard to protect was precisely what she didn't deserve the most. Gu Cheng and I looked at each other, and we both understood that we had mastered the ultimate trump card that could be fatal with a single blow, and the moment of decisive battle had arrived. Gu Jiangwo is a person with great action, and he decided to do a spiritual appraisal for me, so he immediately arranged everything. On Sunday morning, he called and asked us to go back to the old house immediately in an unquestionable commanding tone. saying that he had invited several of the most prestigious elders in the family, as well as a friend of his who was a psychiatrist, to give me a consultation on the spot. This is not a trial at all. This is a parade in public. He wants to label me as a mentally ill in front of everyone, and then sweep me out of the house justifiably. I calmly agreed on the phone. Okay. Gu Jiangwo didn't seem to expect me to cooperate so much. He was stunned for a moment, then snorted coldly and hung up the phone. Gu Cheng and I drove to the old house with the printed document. The atmosphere in the car was particularly depressing. Gu Qing held the steering wheel tightly. The blue veins on the back of his hands were bulging, and the jawline was tight, and I could feel the torment in his heart uncovering his mother's disguise with his own hands, defining her decades of life as a joke, which was a cruel torture for any child. I stretched out my hand, covered the back of his hand, and whispered, Gu Qing, it's not your fault. You are preventing her from hurting more people, including herself. He took a deep breath, nodded, and his eyes became firm again. Pushing open the door of the old house, a murderous aura came to his face. The living room was full of people. Gu Jiangwo sat on the main seat. His face was so gloomy that he could drip water. Zhang Lan sat next to him. His eyes were red. His shoulders trembled slightly, and he looked pitiful and wronged. The aunts I saw last time were also there, and there was a middle-aged man wearing gold glasses and looking gentle. Presumably he was Gu Jiangwo's friend who was a psychiatrist. They formed a judgment seat, and I, the prisoner who was about to be nailed to the pillar of shame, was about to be nailed to the pillar of shame. Gu Jiangwo raised his eyelids and said in a cold tone, coming, sit down. We didn't sit down. Gu Qing pulled me to the center of the living room, standing opposite everyone. Gu Qing spoke. His voice was not loud, but with an unprecedented coldness. Dad, I called everyone here today. Just right. Some things should be clarified. Gu Jiangwo frowned. What do you want to say? Today is to solve Meng Yao's problem. No, Dad, you are wrong. Gu Qing shook his head. What we want to solve today is her problem. He raised his hand sharply and pointed at Zhang Lan. Zhang Lan's body trembled, and a panicked expression appeared on her face. Gu Qing didn't give her any chance to react. He slammed the document in his hand on the mahogany coffee table, and the paper spread out and made a crisp sound. Dad, haven't you always wanted to know, why did my mother have to drive Yao Yao away? Didn't she say that Yao Yao's family has a genetic mental illness, and she is to protect the blood of our Gu family? Gu Qing picked up the medical record report at the top and held it high, as if showing a trophy. Now, let me tell you, what is the truth? 20 years ago, my mother, Zhang Lan, was diagnosed as a carrier of the Fanconi anemia gene in our hospital. This is a blood disease that will be passed on to future generations. Sick children are at risk of developmental malformations and bone marrow failure. She herself is the one who will pollute the blood of the Gu family. His voice, like thunder on the ground, exploded in the living room, and everyone was stunned. Zhang Lan's face lost its color when she brushed. She rushed up like crazy, trying to snatch the report, screaming while grabbing it. You talk nonsense. You talk nonsense. This is a fake. Gu Qing easily avoided her and handed the report to Gu Jiangwo. Gu Jiangwo's hands trembled. He took the paper, his eyes fixed on the words Fanconi anemia, and the muscles on his face kept twitching. And this. Gu Qing picked up another piece of paper. My mother's education is not high school. It's junior high school. Her hometown is not a provincial capital, but a remote village dozens of miles away. She lied to you from the beginning. Her life, from the moment she married you, was a complete lie. She accused Yao Yao of having a bad family background and low education. But what about herself? What qualifications does she have? What qualifications does a woman with genetic disease genes and full of lies have to keep saying that she wants to protect the Gu family's bloodline? This is simply the funniest joke in the world. Gu Cheng's every word was like a heavy hammer, smashing Zhang Lan's dignity and on Gu Jiangwo's proud face. The entire living room was as quiet as death. Only Zhang Lan's collapsed and desperate cries. Gu Jiangwo seemed to be 10 years older in an instant. He slumped in his chair, his eyes blank, and he muttered to himself, fake. It's all fake. He can't accept that the happy family he has run all his life is actually a sandcastle built on lies and deception. Those relatives looked at each other one by one, and the expressions on their faces changed from shock to contempt, and finally to gloating. The psychiatrist friend pushed his glasses awkwardly, stood up quietly, and slipped out the door, for fear of getting into trouble. Gu Qing looked at his mother who had completely collapsed. There was no pity in his eyes, only endless sadness. He stepped forward, looked at her condescendingly, word by word, clearly and decisively announced, from today onwards, I, Gu Qing, and you Zhang Lan, sever the mother-son relationship. Zhang Lan's crying stopped abruptly. She raised her head in disbelief, looking at her son who had raised her own hands. There was no longer half warmth in his eyes, only a cold, desolate dead silence. She knew that she was completely finished. She was sentenced to death, and in the contemptuous eyes of everyone, her life was completely defeated and collapsed. The final judgment came faster and more thoroughly than we imagined. Gu Jiangwo is an extremely face-saving person. He can tolerate his wife's strength and her vexatiousness, but he absolutely cannot tolerate deception. Especially this kind of big lie that has lasted for decades and trampled his life and dignity under his feet. He looked at the report in his hand, then looked up at Zhang, who was crying heart-wrenchingly and full of makeup, and then looked at the unconcealable contempt of the relatives around him. A huge sense of shame that had been fooled for half his life, mixed with the fear that the family bloodline might be contaminated, instantly engulfed him. He felt that his face, along with the reputation of several generations of the Gu family, was pressed to the ground by Zhang, a woman, and rubbed against it. He didn't get angry anymore, or even look at Zhang again, but in an extremely cold voice, he said to the assistant beside him, "Contact Lawyer Li. Tomorrow morning, draft a divorce agreement. She is the party at fault. I want her to leave the house." This sentence, like the final verdict, hit Zhang Lan's heart. She cried and rushed over, trying to grab Gu Jiangwo's trouser leg and beg for mercy. But he kicked her away in disgust. The divorce procedures went exceptionally smoothly, because Zhang was the party at fault and there was serious fraud, and the top lawyer Gu Jiangwo found left her with almost no room for resistance. In the end, she only received a symbolic compensation, which was only enough to rent a small house outside, and was kicked out of the mansion where she had lived for decades. Overnight, she went from a pampered rich wife to an abandoned woman who had nothing. She wanted to go back to her parents' house, but her brothers and sisters, after learning that she carried genetic disease genes and had deceived her husband's family for many years, they were afraid of being implicated, afraid of being retaliated against by the Gu family, and even more afraid that she would come back to share the already meager family property. When she was in the prime of her life, they came up to please her one by one, but now there is only indifference and prevarication of drawing a clear line, which is really cold in the world. It is perfect to describe her. With that little money, she rented a dark and damp basement in the most marginal corner of the city, where there was no sunlight and the air was always filled with a musty smell. Everything she was proud of before her son, her husband, her wealthy life, the flattery of others all came to naught overnight. The huge blow completely broke her spirit, and she began to go crazy, wandering around in dirty clothes all day long, muttering to passers-by, "My son is a doctor, surgeon. My husband is a big boss. It's all the fault of that vixen. She harmed me." The words she used to frame me have now become the topic of conversation for others to laugh at her. And the neighbors say that the new old woman in the basement is a madman. And Wang Qian's fate was not much better. After that family criticism meeting, she was taken back to her hometown by her parents and strictly supervised. She had been hoping that her Lin Hao could drive a Porsche to rescue her, but what she was waiting for was one phone call and text message after another to collect online loans. In the end, the people of the collection company found her hometown, and on the gate of her house, she was painted with red paint with the words "debt repayment." It is natural, and she became completely famous in the village and became the object of everyone's ridicule. Her parents felt that they had lost face, beat her severely, threw her tens of thousands of dollars, asked her to solve the mess on her own, and then kicked her out of the house. It really responds to that sentence. Evil is rewarded, and you may be late, but you will never be absent. My life with Gu Qing finally returned to calm after experiencing this huge storm. We didn't go back to the old house. Gu Qing used the fastest speed, in another better environment, to buy a new house. A place far away from all the best relatives and all the unbearable memories. Those tragic news about Zhang Lan and Wang Qian were occasionally mentioned by a friend of Gu Qing, and we listened. There was no wave in our hearts, as if we were listening to a piece of news from the last century, distant, and had nothing to do with us. All grievances had been settled, and the dust had settled. Our new home is a duplex with a terrace on the top floor, and the huge floor-to-ceiling windows are open urban landscapes, where sunlight can shine in without hindrance, illuminating every corner of the living room and making it particularly warm. On the day of the move, Gu Qing took care of all the heavy work by himself and didn't let me move. I looked at his busy figure, sweat soaking his shirt and sticking to his broad back, outlining strong muscle lines, which was particularly secure. He seemed to notice my gaze, turned around, and showed me a bright smile. "Wife, you rest. I'll do this." After experiencing this storm, Gu Qing became more considerate than before. He took care of almost all the housework at home, made nutritious meals for me in different ways every day, and insisted on massaging my swollen calves at night. And I also completely let go of the mustard in my heart, and the trust between us has become more indestructible after being tempered by fire. I raised my baby in my new home with peace of mind, slept until I woke up naturally, read a book, listened to music, or went for a walk in the garden downstairs, feeling calm and tranquil like never before. In my spare time, I began to try to write something online, and I opened an anonymous social account to adapt my own experiences into short stories in a gentler and more universal way. Instead of exaggerating hatred, I shared more about my thoughts on difficult situations, as well as how to rebuild self-worth and deal with unhealthy family relationships. Unexpectedly, my sharing resonated with many netizens, and many people left messages below, telling their own stories, and asking me for advice and comfort. "Blogger, you are so brave. Your story has given me a lot of strength." Me too. I have been PUA by my husband, and after reading your article, I decided not to endure it anymore. Thank you for letting me know that I'm not fighting alone. Looking at these messages, I found a new sense of value that was needed, and I began to seriously manage the account, replying to everyone's private messages every day to encourage women who, like me, were struggling with unhealthy family relationships. I have more and more fans. And even publishers have contacted me to compile my story into a book, but I declined to publish it. But I know that I have found a new and my own career direction, a direction that can help others and realize my self-worth. In the evening, Gu Cheng and I snuggled up on the rattan chair on the terrace, looking at the night view of the city in the distance. I read the message on my mobile phone to him. He listened quietly, then hugged me tightly into his arms, kissed my forehead, and said gently, "My wife, it's awesome. You are like a light, not only illuminating me, but also illuminating many people." I leaned against his chest, feeling his powerful heartbeat, as well as the fetal movements of the baby in the womb from time to time.